Oh, Vecna, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey, Vecna. Hey, Vecna. Oh, Vecna, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey, Vecna. Hey, Vecna.
Laughing aloud now, magic in the air. Wands roll around us, cast away our care. Friends in the hallways, adventures we find. Spells and enchantments, trouble on our mind. That's so wizards, oh, 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 oh. Life is a spell we know. We're casting joy and glow, oh, oh. That's a wizard show.
Good morning and welcome. Rats are leaving the sinking ship. Is D&D doomed? That seems to be the question on everybody's lips after the last 2 weeks, starting off with the news out of Gary Kahn of Wizards of the Coast's new plans to take Dungeons and Dragons in exciting new directions of branding. We had the announcement that Chris Perkins was retiring for Wizards of the Coast, which I, for one, am very happy for. Now, sadly, he was the last best hope for the future of Dungeons and Dragons, the game, but I think he has been miserable for quite a while, and he will be much better off, personally, once he takes a good long breath and readdresses what he wants to do with his life away from Wizards of the Coast. But in one of the many interviews, which has got a lot of people wondering what exactly he meant, because we do know Chris Perkins has a history of playing things close to the vest and very subtly dropping insults and hints over what's going on at Wizards of the Coast. So in one of the articles, in one of the interviews, he referred to it as a fairy tale ending for D&D. Well, for his time at D&D for the past 30 years, he refers to his retirement as a fairy tale ending for D&D. Well, at least his time at D&D. Now, some people are making nothing of that. It's just him, saying what he needs to say. But other people are finding maybe a second hidden meaning in there, which is not unusual for Chris. He has dropped little hints before. He is very careful when he says things. Is he referring to that him relieving is a fairy tale ending of his life with Dungeons and Dragons? Or is he referring to the fact that him leaving is a fairy tale ending for Dungeons and Dragons? This comes, of course, on the follow-up of the announcements from Gary Kahn. And let's not forget, in his own words, Chris Crawford informed us that Dungeons and Dragons 2024 only has a 5-year lifespan, only has a 5-year story. They said that. I'm not making that up, which means D&D as we currently know it, 2024, 2025 D&D, would end in 2030 or evolve to the next logical step that Wizards of the Coast Hasbro wants it to evolve to, which is a digital brand as opposed to the role-playing game. But Chris Perkins is not the only rat leaving the sinking ship. Now we have another announcement of another individual leaving. Shortly after Chris Perkins announced he was leaving, unliked, what's the word I'm saying? I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Another guy left. Oh, I got a comment. I agree that Chris Perkins was very unhappy at the end of his time in Wizards. I don't think he's been happy for the past 4 or 5 years. Look at any video that he has made with Wizards of the Coast, especially in the videos with Crawford. He looks unhappy. He looks unhealthy. He doesn't look like he wants to be there. And there's always these very subtle hints, subtle insults that he hides within what he says. Plus, you can just look at the way that he positions himself. It's always slightly behind Crawford, like he doesn't want to be near him. He even moved his office to the opposite side of the building. Now, again, this is pure conjecture. I have no actual proof that this is true. Chris Cow is leaving as well. Now, Chris Cow might not be as well recognized as Chris Perkins. That's what I meant to be said, or as popular as Chris Perkins, but Chris Cow has announced that he is also retiring. Now, you might be asking yourself, who's Chris Cow? Well, he was the Sigil guy. Sigil was his baby. He was one of the many people that said Sigil would, be the thing. He's also the guy who said during the OGL crisis that old fucks like me don't need their books anymore. And since everything's going to be on D&D Beyond, new players don't need to buy books. So, yeah, he also had some dabbling in magic, but definitely he was basically a guy who has a history of saying some things that the D&D community took umbrage with. And now he's also announced his retirement. Not surprising considering his baby, his big investment, Sigil, crashed and burned, and Wizards has no plans of reigniting that. They're moving on to D&D maps and dungeon delves, whatever that is. Because there's a book coming out with dungeon delves, but the book has nothing to do with anything digital. But maybe there's also another digital thing coming out in the future they're going to call Dungeon Delves. I don't know. They haven't explained it. They just mentioned it in the article when they were talking about Sigil. But that guy's gone. But don't worry, because apparently they have found someone to replace, at least partially replace. Not that anybody can fully replace, but partially replace our good friend Chris Perkins. They have dug to the bottom of the barrel, and good old Gregg Bisland is coming back as the executive producer for Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know what that means, but he's going to come back as executive producer. Who's Gregg Bisland, you might be asking yourself? Well, he's a 4th edition guy. And he lost his job or took leave or whatever, or was asked to leave during the 4th edition years because of the failure of 4th edition. Since that time, if you look at his LinkedIn page, he's had a series of jobs at various video game companies and game companies, none of them lasting longer than 2 years. I asked around if anybody remembered the guy. Nobody remembered him. Then one person was like, yeah, I remember that he wasn't really, just another guy that we were like glad to see leave. And a lot of Dungeons and Dragons disasters during the 4th edition years were somehow associated with him. I couldn't remember him. I had no idea when this was mentioned to me that he was coming back, or why Wizards would go back to somebody who they had let go because he wasn't doing very well and who has a history of not lasting at a job longer than 2 years. Definitely leave the workplace worse than when you find it. I don't know. But yeah, he's back. Probably for a lot less than what they were paying Perkins as the new executive producer for Dungeons and Dragons. Can we expect this guy to turn the train engine? Ugh, that one came out wrong. And save D&D from the death spiral of 2030? Probably not. Probably not. If anything, he's there just so they can have somebody new to blame things on when things go wrong. Does Wizards of the Coast need an executive producer for Dungeons and Dragons? No. What would it do? The only reason to hire somebody new with a flimsy position like that would be, so they have somebody to blame things on. And, kind of like Kyle Brink. We're going to make this guy the new scapegoat. But don't worry. Despite the good news that Gregg Bisland, the makes news that Gregg Bisland has left the building. I mean, is joining the building, and Chris Cow has left the building. We do have some artwork because we haven't had a chance to make fun of Wizards of the Coast artwork yet. So Wizards has dropped some of the art from the new Dragon Delves book. This is the new dragon book that's coming out because remember, they've never done a dragon book before, as long as you don't count the dragon book that came out last year or the year before. This is going to be the new one. This is the one where they, explore dragons in a brand new way because they've never done that before. As long as you don't count the multiple dragon books they've made in the past. They've never ever done a dragon-centric product before. So here's some of the art, and apparently they have got a lot of different people doing the art. So we have a lot of different styles. Now, I don't know if this is AI art. We'll look at it momentarily. I don't know if this is part of the whole you submit stuff and it becomes ours. So I don't know where the art came from. But it's definitely a bunch of different styles. So we got this classic black and white, old school dragon. You know how I feel about the black on the black on the black on the black, but this doesn't look so bad. Though if you were ever trying to print this out, it probably would kill your printer. Then we got this goofy looking gold dragon, who I actually don't mind. And this weird, I don't know what the style of art is called, but it's definitely weird. I don't know why the gold dragon's got food and so many sweets, but sure, whatever. Then we've got this very cool looking blue dragon. I don't know what it's doing underground in a room with a giant statue, since blue dragons usually hang out outside, or why there's ice behind it. Maybe it's supposed to be in the ice giant dungeon. I don't remember a blue dragon in that dungeon, but okay. Then we got this glow in the dark t-shirt with, for some reason, binoculars. This looks like something you'd see in an old, 1980s glow in the dark Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt. I don't mind this one too much. Not sure where he looks vaguely aquatic. Then we got this one. This is the artwork we're getting used to now from Wizards. The watercolor. Is this AI? Weird proportions. Is that boat on the ocean? Is it on the beach? Is it in the sky? I don't really know what's going on. Is this AI? Is this painted? Why is it this washed out watercolor? And we've got this Githyanki, another glow in the dark looking type, blacklight poster. Not sure what a Githyanki has to do with dragons or why he has the Sword of Omens, but okay. Sure. And then we got back to the watercolor. Got some dude in a cave, and he's talking to a small dragon. The dragon's probably thinking, can I fit his head in my mouth? And again, this the watercolor, washed out, weird proportions. Is this AI? I don't know. It looks like his fingers are dripping off of his palm there, so maybe AI. Then we have this one. So we got big dragon, little dragon, and I think the dragon's breathing fire on somebody. I think that's a person, though it could also be their tongue. I don't know. And then there's a little white dragon behind them who's getting struck by lightning because I don't know. White dragons are snow, not lightning, so unless they've changed him. Teeny little green dragon up there, and then good old red dragon. So there's some art for you. There's some art. So this brings us up to the Is D&D Doomed? With Chris Parkins leaving, Is D&D Doomed? Dracoya and the Pickled Dragon made a video yesterday about Is D&D Doomed? I find it very ironic that my very good friend, Scott McClintock, has released the announcement for the latest in the Doomedforgotenrealms adventure series. How it's very ironic that as we are contemplating the doom of Dungeons and Dragons, Scott releases the announcement of a brand new adventure in the Doomedforgotenrealms series, which I absolutely love. You guys know I'm a huge fan of the Doomedforgotenrealms storyline. If I ever ran 5th edition again or Dungeons and Dragons again, it would be the Doomedforgotenrealms. It would be the post-apocalypse that happened because the adventurers failed to stop the death plague from Tomb of Annihilation. So very ironic that Scott is releasing this as we discuss the doom of Dungeons and Dragons. So to follow up on Dracoya and the Pickled Dragon, is Dungeons and Dragons doomed? What is Dungeons and Dragons? Okay. Are we referring to the idea of Dungeons and Dragons? Are we referring to Dungeons and Dragons, the brand, or are we referring to Dungeons and Dragons, the game? So is D&D doomed? Is Dungeons and Dragons, the game, doomed? With Chris Perkins leaving, yes, I do believe that the tabletop role-playing game as it is today will probably mutate again in 2030 and will not really exist as the way we think of D&D. In, the armor class, hit points, roll dice. And that's because of two reasons. One, because Wizards has said that's not their focus anymore. The player's handbook, the game doesn't make them any money. We discussed this the other day before I ran into that cat. The game doesn't make them any money, and that's not where they want to put their energy. So whatever the evolution of roll dice, Wizards of the Coast D20, if it's a game at all after 2030, it will only be Dungeons and Dragons in name. It will not be recognizable as level-based D20 fantasy. It will most likely just be used to get people to do the digital thing. Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro is constantly telling us over and over and over and over again, the future is digital. We're going digital. We're not going to do the physical thing anymore. And with the announcement of the tariffs, it's going to make even harder for us to do the physical thing. And there's no money in the physical thing anymore. So maybe we release 3, 4, 6 books a year. But it's far more cost effective for us to let other people use the license to make stuff, because the AI will gobble it and anything you make is ours. And it's much more cost effective that we focus on the digital and we focused on the branding. So is D&D the game as we know it doomed? Yes. I mean, there'll always be people playing some version of level-based D20 Gygaxian fantasy, just like during the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. There were, multiple times where people said D&D is doomed, D&D is dead. But, they'll always be it yourself. There'll always be it. There'll always be something. There will always be us playing games. There will always be kids rolling dice playing games. It will not be what we consider Gygaxian level-based fantasy coming out of Wizards of the Coast. But there's plenty of other companies making Gygaxian level-based fantasy. So D&D the game, as far as Wizards of the Coast is associated with, yes, it's doomed. Is D&D the brand doomed? Absolutely not. It is far too ingrained in the public's consciousness that there will always be some aspect of Wizards finding a way to monopolize that brand, that public perception. Even as we speak, we've got another D&D movie in the works. We've got the upcoming Dungeons and Dragons television show. We've got another Drizzt book about his daughter Breezy. We've got Dungeons and Dragons, the thing they're doing at Universal. They're talking about doing a full year-round interactive Dungeons and Dragons thing similar to Omega Mart and some of the other full year-round art installations that Meow Wolf does. There's even talk of a Dungeons and Dragons play. There's the Dungeons and Dragons live interactive stuff. Dungeons and Dragons the musical. Dungeons and Dragons Go, from the same people who brought us Monopoly Go. That's in the works. The brand will always exist in some form because the brand is ingrained in our pop culture. So even if we're playing SHADOWDARK and they're not producing any D20 level-based fantasy product at Hasbro, even if Wizards of the Coast cease to exist, because let's face it, Hasbro doesn't need Wizards of the Coast. Everything Wizards of the Coast is making can be made by somebody else. They don't need Wizards. Don't need Wizards to make D&D. The AI can make D&D. Definitely don't need Wizards to make Magic. Magic literally just makes itself. And they want to refocus on Magic because Magic makes them more money. Magic is pure profit. The dice are pure profit. The figures are pure profit. The maps are pure profit. The art books are pure profit. The cookbook is pure profit. Audio story is pure profit. Anything that they can brand with Dungeons and Dragons is pure profit, and that's what they want to focus on. So D&D, the brand, is going to be around for a very long time. That's not dead, the name. So then we come to the third one, the idea of Dungeons and Dragons. When you say Dungeons and Dragons, the image it projects into the collective unconscious of humanity. Because even people who have never played D&D know the word. And the minute you say that word, it evokes, God, I love using the big words, it evokes a certain image. You can go anywhere on Earth now, and they have some idea of Dungeons and Dragons, even if they don't know what Dungeons and Dragons is. It is that ingrained in the collective unconscious, and it is that ingrained in public perception. It's that ingrained in pop culture that it can never go away. We will always refer to any game we're playing as let's go play D&D. Even if we're playing Star Wars or SHADOWDARK or Vigilantes for SHADOWDARK, which is marked down to $15, you should buy my game. It's D&D. Playing Tunnels, Troll Lord games, Castles and Crusades, it's D&D. Playing Villains and Vigilantes, it's D&D. Playing Creeks and Crawdads, it's D&D. Playing Mork Borg Muppets, it's D&D. Even if it's not D&D, it's D&D. The idea of D&D will not go away. Somebody said that even if Gygax hadn't created Dungeons and Dragons, the game was inevitable. It would eventually have appeared in some form anyways. It was just inevitable that something like that would have eventually shown up. Gygax just plugged in first. Or did he? So D&D, the idea, is not dead. And it will never die. It's like Casablanca. It's everybody knows what Casablanca is, even if they don't know what Casablanca is. Spider-Man. Everybody knows who Spider-Man is, even if they don't know who Spider-Man is. I remember when they announced that Robin Williams died. This is a weird side story, but it just goes to show how ingrained certain things are in public. So somebody comes up to me and tells me, "Did you hear Robin died?" And the first thing I thought, because it's so ingrained in my unconscious, was which one? Dick Grayson, Jason Todd? And then they were like, no, Robin Williams died. And I was like, oh, okay. I hadn't heard that. But that's my point, is instantly my brain went to unconsciously Robin, Dick Grayson, Robin, Jason Todd, Robin, Damian Wayne, Robin, the other guy, Tim Drake. It didn't go to Robin Williams because Dungeons and Dragons, Batman, is so ingrained that it can't die. 20 years from now, 40 years from now, 80 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, the idea will still somehow be in public pop culture, even if we don't know what rolling dice and levels are. Everybody knows who Batman is, even if you've never seen Batman. Everybody knows what Star Wars is, even if you've never seen Star Wars. Everybody knows who Santa Claus is, even if you don't believe in Santa Claus. It's Bigfoot. There are just certain things that have become so iconic that they can't die. You can't. So D&D, the idea, is not doomed. D&D, the brand, for now, is not doomed. Wizards Hasbro has made it very clear over and over again that is their focus. They have been telling you this since 2020. They told you this again at this year. D&D, the brand. D&D beef sticks. D&D beard oil. And you think, well, this is new and dumb. No, go back to the 80s and look at some of the weird stuff that came out. D&D Shrinky Dinks. I mean, D&D wood stamps. There was a lot of weird things that TSR hooked the D&D brand to in the early 80s. So D&D beard oil and D&D beef sticks aren't that weird. I mean, beard oil was kind of weird, but yeah, you know, Magic the Gathering Hot Pockets, not that weird. Yes, the worst thing Wizards of the Coast could do for the hobby is to keep doing. The hobby will live long past Wizards of the Coast. So yeah, D&D the brand is fine. D&D the game that Wizards of the Coast currently holds in their little greedy hands is doomed. And if Wizards of the Coast continues to treat the game while they're treating it the same way they have been treating it, it is doomed even further. The hobby will survive D&D. Whether it burns in flames or evolves into something else, no matter what Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons does in the future, the tabletop role-playing game won't go away. Tabletop role-playing will always exist. It existed before Gygax. It existed all the way back during the Greek plays. Dramatic play with rules has existed ad infinitum. So we will outlive the heat death of Dungeons and Dragons as owned by Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast probably doesn't have much life. Chris Perkins leaving was the first nail in the coffin. Chris Cow leaving is the second nail in the coffin. I wouldn't be surprised if sometime between now and 2027, Crawford's gone, because they're going to start blaming things on him sooner or later. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people we can't stand are gone. The staff now is like, 300 people, divided between Wizards of the Coast to Seattle. And we don't even know how many people are left at Wizards of the Coast, Texas. How often do you even hear about Wizards of the Coast, Texas? I think most people have forgotten about Wizards of the Coast, Texas, or Hasbro, Rhode Island. But they're there, and a lot of that staff is gone. Okay. Again, I know a lot of people think Elon Musk. No. Hasbro is not ever going to let the name Dungeons and Dragons go. They will hold on to that for as long as they can, because the name is money, as I just explained. So they might sell off the game engine, but they'll never sell off the brand. They might shut down Wizards of the Coast, but they'll never sell off the brand. Most likely, rather than sell it off, they'll do the same thing with it that they did with Power Rangers, Transformers, G.I. Joe, and a couple of the other things that they own that you haven't heard from in a while, like Mask or ROM, or, a whole bunch of the toy lines that they came out with in the 80s. They'll shelve it. D&D will sit on a shelf. They'll auction off anything that's associated with Dungeons and Dragons, but the rights are theirs. The name is theirs. And just like Power Rangers, just like Transformers, just like anything else, they'll just sit on it. If Hasbro holds on, the fans will turn against D&D. Fans have already turned against D&D. Look, SHADOWDARK. Look at all the other games. Hasbro doesn't care. The fans are a small minority compared to the millions of people worldwide that they can sell Dungeons and Dragons t-shirts to. We don't make them any money. Buying one player's handbook once every 6 years doesn't make Hasbro any money. There's no money in player's handbooks for them. There's no money in core books for them. All the money comes from the branding. They don't give a fuck about the game. They haven't given a fuck about the game since 4th edition. Will they continue to piss people off and say stupid things? Yes. I can see another 5 years of white people need to live the hobby. I'm the first autistic person ever playing D&D. Whatever other stupid things they've said. Yeah, that seems to be ingrained in the way they do business now. I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just stupid, or it's just they feel they can say whatever they want to say because nothing can stop them. They're untouchable. We can do whatever we want. We can say whatever we want. We know you idiots are still going to buy our game. We know there's always going to be one person out there, one Jeannie D, one Scott Garrity, one whoever singing our praises. And even if it's all people like the OGGM and Dyson Diversity and all the other people who talk crap about us and say horrible things about us, even if it's 10 years of people dumping on us and D&D sinks down to the bottom of the ocean and everybody's playing GURPS and Vampire and Cyberpunk, as long as there's one person playing, as long as the dice are out there, as long as the figures are out there, as long as the t-shirts are out there, as long as the Universal Studios things makes money and they're expecting it to make money, we can market Dungeons and Dragons forever. We can market Power Rangers forever, or we can let it sit on a shelf until the industry turns. But letting it go? No. Now, will they let Wizards of the Coast go? Will they sell Wizards of the Coast off? I don't think they'll sell it off, but I have absolute faith that Wizards of the Coast will cease to exist as we understand it sometime between now and 2:30. Again, Chris Perkins announcing his retirement was the ringing of the bell, the death knell, and then Chris Cow, and then bringing back this other dude. Yeah, Wizards of the Coast is dead. It's at this point, it's just a scapegoat. It's just something that exists so Hasbro can blame bad press on them. Because Hasbro doesn't need Wizards. Hasbro wants to focus on Magic the Gathering. Hasbro doesn't need Wizards to make Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering makes itself. Hasbro wants to focus on Dungeons and Dragons Digital, D&D Go, Dungeon Delvers, whatever that is, D&D Beyond Maps. Hasbro doesn't need Wizards of the Coast to make any of that. All they need is 2 or 3 script kiddies. And they've got the AI, which is supposedly just, plunging through the depths of everything created for Dungeons and Dragons for the past 50 years and creating new stuff so we get this wonderful stuff. I don't need people at Wizards of the Coast who do nothing but bring me bad press. I don't need you. You don't do anything, Wizards of the Coast. Everything you do, if they did, I hadn't heard about it, but I'll look into it. I wouldn't be surprised. If you're talking about the Adventurers Guild thing, that has not been confirmed. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. It makes absolutely no sense for them to shut down the Adventurers Guild. I've spoken to people at the Adventurers Guild. There's no mention, as far as they know, of Wizards shutting it down. They're working on deals for the Adventurers Guild right now with other companies and other people. So why would Wizards shut it down? It's free money and they don't have to do anything. If there's been another Pinkerton incident, I haven't heard about it. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah. Wow, 33 minutes. All right, let's wrap this up because nobody wants to hear me talk for 33 minutes. Is Wizards of the Coast doomed? Yes. Is Dungeons and Dragons the game doomed? It's going to evolve into something that we probably won't recognize or like, so sure. Is Dungeons and Dragons the brand doomed? No. Is Dungeons and Dragons the idea doomed? No. Do we care that Chris Perkins is left? Yes. Do we care that Chris Cow is left? No. Do we care that this other guy is back as the executive producer? No, because he has a horrible stank around him, and I'm sure he's working for peanuts. And the only reason Wizards probably brought him back, Hasbro brought him back, is to blame things on him. But we have new art, and Scott McClintock has announced the latest episode of the Doomedforgotenrealms adventure series, which if you've never played through or read the Doomedforgotenrealms adventure series, it operates under the assumption that all the major modules, the characters lost. So Against the Giants, the characters lost. Rime of the Frost Maiden, the characters lost. And most especially Tomb of Annihilation, Sarasek was successful. And then it turns out that the mastermind behind the entire Doomedforgotenrealms was Vecna. So with the end of Tomb of Annihilation, it's discovered that Vecna was the secret power behind Sarasek. The Tomb of Annihilation death plague is successful, and then it just goes from there. And it's the story that Wizards should have told post Tomb of Annihilation with every adventure that happened after that. And with especially involving, of course, the running storyline of the Black Obelisk, which had been with us since Mines. And then, of course, they dropped the ball on the Black Obelisk story, and they told us that stupid Vecna story. So if you've never had a chance to check out Scott McClintock's Doomedforgotenrealms adventure series, and you want a D&D adventure where the bad guys won, check out Doomedforgotenrealms. It's available on drive-thru/DMs Guild. I'll post a link down below. And I guess that's about it, because, you know, I think it's all time for us to just look at this week's news and go, yeah, you're right. What did I expect anything less? Because
laughing aloud now, magic in the air. Wands roll around us, cast away our care. Friends in the hallways, adventures we find. Spells and enchantments, trouble on our mind. That's so wizard, oh, 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 oh. Life is a spell we know. We're casting joy and glow, oh, oh. That's a wizard show. Mischief in the classroom, potions gone astray. Flying through the quad, now brighter every day. Laugh so we cry hard, sneaking out at night. Cloaks in the moonlight, everything feels right. That's so wizards, oh,